Welcome to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers Podcast. Each episode will bring you conversations from business leaders and up-and-coming stars in the commercial real estate industry in Canada. Our guests will share their unique career journeys, passions, and advice on what it takes to be successful in this industry. This podcast is brought to you by Highview Partners, connecting people who perform in Canadian real estate.
I'm your host, Richard Costello, and today I'm pleased to introduce Murtaza Haider. Murtaza Haider is a professor at the Ted Rogers School of Management, Ryerson University in Toronto, and an adjunct professor of engineering at McGill University. Murtaza is also the director of a consulting firm, Regionomics Inc. Murtaza specializes in applying analytics and statistical models to find solutions for socio-economic challenges. His research interests include applied analytics, data science, forecasting, housing market dynamics, transport, infrastructure, urban planning, and human development in Canada and South Asia. Murtaza is the author of Getting Started with Data Science, Making Sense of Data with Analytics. He is also an avid blogger and writes regular columns for the Financial Post. Murtaza Haider holds a Master's in Transport Engineering and Planning and a Ph.D. in Urban Systems Analysis from the University of Toronto. Murtaza, a big welcome to you and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to our conversation today.
Wonderful. So in what is a twist on our usual format, we're grateful to have you join us for what we hope will be a regular feature in which we hear more of your insights into the various trends, topics, and headlines related to the commercial real estate industry. But before we get into that, Murtaza, perhaps you can give us an overview of your background and explain how this has given you a unique lens in which to view the industry.
Sure. I think what I have is a non-conformist academic and work experience or background. I'm trained as a civil engineer. That's my first degree in training. And then immediately afterwards, I actually went into journalism and started writing for newspapers. And while I was writing for newspapers, I got the idea or desire to study more in journalism. So came to Canada and studied journalism at Ryerson University. And then at that moment, got a lucky break or a sudden break and had an opportunity to work in finance. So I joined Nesbitt Burns, which is a finance firm, a brokerage, and worked there as a data analyst for 2 years. And a lot of things that I learned there from which I was not exposed to in the past allowed me to then see the world rather differently and saw the economics and finance as it underlines everything that, or almost everything that we do. So from Nesbitt Burns, I went back to university, got a master's and Ph.D., and then became a professor of infrastructure and transportation at McGill University, and continued there working on transportation and housing and infrastructure problems, doing research in all these areas, and then got a chance to come back to Toronto at Ryerson University. And since 2006, I've been at Ryerson University and essentially doing research in same housing, urban systems, transportation, and also a lot of work on data science and analytics to see how we can use the new this abundance of data that we are creating through machines and other systems, and see if we can use them and make intelligent decisions from using data and applying some analytics to it. In the whole process, I kept writing blogs and newspaper articles, and now I'm a syndicated columnist with Post Media, and our columns appear in Financial Post and National Post, Calgary Herald, or Vancouver Sun, or Montreal Gazette, or Ottawa Citizen. So we are very fortunate to have this association with Post Media to get our housing or real estate research out to much larger audiences every week.
That's fantastic. Thank you. So I have plenty of questions for you, but only so much time to cover in this episode. So I thought we would look at a few topics that you've written about recently. So I should say, for context, we're recording this on July 6th. So it's around 4 months since the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. And the scale at which the pandemic has uprooted so much of what we accepted as normal daily life has been unbelievable. So it's truly upended so many people's lives, and the hardship and anxieties are far from over. It seems clear that the longer we have to restrict our behaviors, the longer it will take us as a society to return to pre-COVID life, and some things may never fully return to the way they were. There's been an incredible amount of content published about how the various sectors of the real estate industry have been impacted, and predictions made on what the lasting effects will be. Regarding the future of the office, it's now been proven that we have the technology to work from home without any major issues. There's obviously pros and cons to this, and I think there's consensus that the office will continue to play a big role in the function of any successful business. From a recruitment and retention perspective, the quality of a company's office space will continue to be hugely important, but so too will a company's work from home policy. And I think we'll see a lot more of a hybrid or flex model in the future. There's no question that businesses are reassessing their real estate footprints as a result of all of this. And I'm sure we'll see changes in not only how much space businesses require, but also what that space looks like and how it's used. This could mean more collaborative spaces, bookable rooms, etc. As we look at getting people back to the office, I'm in Vancouver and we're slight ahead of Toronto in terms of when we entered phase 3. Anecdotally, it sounds like occupancy in the downtown core is around 30% right now. Childcare is a big issue keeping people at home, but so too are people's concerns around how they get to their offices. And this has been a major theme in your recent work, and I wanted to dig into a couple of your articles in the Financial Post that I found really interesting. They were focused on the challenges around public transportation, specifically horizontal and vertical methods of transportation. So can you elaborate on these, please?
Absolutely. So we are very familiar with our concerns about the horizontal transportation. That's our daily commute from home to work in the morning and then from work to home back. And people have good idea as to how it impacts their lives because they resent the time it takes for this daily ritual to take place, especially if they're stuck in traffic or stuck in public transit. And they mind if there's congestion. And they also are not very pleased when there is uncertainty about congestion. So that is your horizontal transportation. This is pre-COVID. And that is the biggest concern you have is I don't know how long it will take me to get to work. And then at the same time, if you're congested, you're angry about it or you don't feel pleased about it. So on top of it now, you have COVID-19 because there are fears, some founded, some others unfounded, that public transit systems, in the absence of wearing masks and strict adherence to social distancing or physical distancing within transit systems while you're boarding a subway or a bus, or while you are waiting for a vehicle at the transit stop or a platform, if all those restrictions are adhered to, then there's a lesser chance of one getting ill that way. But that fear is still there. And because of that fear, it appears that the transit riderships will take some time to get to the levels that they were before, which means that there will be added friction to get people back to work. So that's the story of horizontal transportation. The other story is of that of vertical transportation. And vertical transportation has never been on our radar because we have taken elevators without thinking much about it. We are aware of the sort of cranky or older elevators in our buildings, or if there are sometimes longer than usual queues. But elevator is not something people complain about, that, oh, I hate my elevator ride from my lobby to my floor. That kind of conversation is not part of the vernacular. So what happens now is that because of physical distancing requirements, an elevator car that was supposed to take 10 to 12 people will now be reduced to taking 4 or less people, which means that the throughput capacity of getting people to their floors will be compromised significantly because of these restrictions, which implies that there will be longer wait times as you stand in your lobbies. In fact, when you get back to work, you will see that perhaps there will be markings for you to wait for your turn to board those elevators, not just in your lobbies, but these lines will run onto the sidewalks and beyond. So you might be waiting for 35 minutes or an hour or even more to get to your floor if these changes, if these lockdown or physical distancing restrictions are not lifted soon. So you put all of this together and you have these two scenarios. Number one is that transit riderships are affected right now. They're down by 80 to 90%. And they may resume, they get to 50%. They will get to 30 to 35%. It will be pushing it to get to them 50% of the pre-COVID riderships. And it would certainly be require much effort to get them up to 70% of the pre-COVID ridership. These are the realities for now. That is before a vaccine is widely available. So you have additional frictions to get people to work. Then you get to work and then you realize you cannot readily get to your floor because of the elevator problems or limitations with elevators. Then you also realize that once you get to your floor, now you can't go down. If you're a smoker, you're done. You may get only one chance to get to your floor, and the second chance is when you're leaving the building to go to your to leave for your home. That's the only time you can ride the elevator back, because everybody would be scheduled and you would have your slot as to when you can go up and when you can go down. So forget about going out for a smoke multiple times a day or going down for a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons or whatever. All of this would be restricted, so much so that it may also include that you may not be allowed back down for lunch. So you may be asked to pack your lunch from home. So you put all of this together, you and if it ends up like this, is sort of a bleak picture, but if it ends up like this, it would take some shine away from returning to work. Right now, I believe people have some working from home fatigue. They're getting tired of being home all the time, seeing the same faces or no faces if they live alone. So there's a desire to, I can't wait to get out of my house. Well, the getting out of the house is easy. Getting to your work still is a big journey and more difficult under the COVID-19 restrictions than before. So these are the physical constraints or throughput capacity restrictions that I believe would impact how people will commute to and from work in the future.
There was a really interesting line in the article that you wrote about elevators, and it was from a fellow academic. I think he was from London, but writing about how in Hong Kong, some people travel greater distances vertically than they do horizontally throughout the course of a day. And I thought that was a really fascinating sort of stat.
Absolutely. So if you live in if your condominium is on the 45th floor of a building, and your work location is on the 50th floor of another building, and just imagine how many times you're going to go up and down during the day. And it would be a normal routine for you because these elevators are super fast elevators. In our research, we found out that some elevators now are running out at as fast as 60 to 70 kilometers an hour. And the research is on for getting even faster elevators up to 100 kilometers an hour speed. So these kind of, and the leading firms are Hitachi and others. So that is all there, but the vertical transportation plays a much bigger role for people who live in places like Hong Kong or Manhattan, where they don't even recognize it, but a lot of their transportation is going up and down through the elevator shafts.
Are you ready to find the best next hire to join your real estate business? Highview is committed to finding the best talent to fit your hiring needs. Our teams specialise in recruiting at all levels, from coordinators, analysts and operators to managers, directors and vice presidents. Contact us today or visit us at highviewpartners.ca/employers.
You've recently written about how the real estate industry needs to retool for the technological revolution ahead. What do you believe are some of the biggest areas of opportunity for technology to impact the commercial real estate industry?
I think, strictly speaking for commercial real estate, I think the use of informatics and data science could help the industry reinvent its business model. I think we are not using the information buildings generate to monitor and manage them better. For instance, over the last 20 plus years, we are using a lot more sensors in our buildings, and we know a lot more on a minute by minute, second by second workings of our buildings. That allows us to see how building is used, how is it occupied, what portions of the buildings are usually occupied, what are not, how much air conditioning or HVAC systems, how to optimize their performance, what kind of glass windows or panes are able to maintain the indoor temperatures or weather or climate. What are the techniques, methods, technologies, materials that make climate control more easier and not only easier but also more affordable. So I think because of the instrumentation, because of the sensors that we have embedded in our new modern buildings and those that have been retrofitted, we are creating or generating mountains and mountains of new data. But the building operators, large landlords, and those who manage buildings, building managers, they do not have the workforce that is data savvy or literate in data enough to be able to optimize building operations on a day by day, hour by hour basis. So there's an opportunity there for the buildings to reduce their environmental footprint, become even more greener, become even more cost effective by adding to their workforce. So right now, when you look at a typical building worker, you see a man or a woman with a big belt around their waist with all sorts of screwdrivers and hammers hanging from it. And I think the next generation of building operations managers will be individuals with just smart devices in their hands, and they're optimizing the sensors. So a lot of this needs to happen. There's so much demand for it. I'll give you an example from our own university. I teach in a faculty of management with over 12,000 full-time equivalent students, and we are just in 3 floors of a building. So we are very pressed for space. The space is really, really, really tight. And what we have to do is to optimize each square inch of our space. So if we have the right kind of technology, we would know which rooms are right now empty, so that students can on a smart device see, this room is empty, and they can verify if it's empty because there's nothing scheduled there, or it's empty because it's going to be occupied in the next 5 minutes. So there could be a live view and a dashboard of live availability of space. So decision making could be more dynamic. I think all of this could happen in commercial real estate. That's one. The second thing is, I think when I wrote about commercial real estate 6 months or maybe a year ago, pre-COVID models of business need to be reevaluated. I think now I would write slightly different, because I feel even after COVID, the commercial tenants will reevaluate their space requirements so that they may start thinking otherwise. The reason I say this is that the same university, my university, that was renting movie theaters so that I can go and teach my large classes because we didn't have enough lecture rooms, that problem is solved. COVID-19 has solved that problem. Now, we were looking for a space for 400 so that I can teach 400 students. Now, with online classes, I have told them put 800 or 1,000 students. I would welcome every student who would like to come and take my real estate management course. Now, we are not physically constrained by the size of the hall. So basically, we were turning students away. Why? Because we had a real estate problem. So somehow we made education problem a real estate problem. So post-COVID, I think a lot of these constraints would be gone, because there will be greater acceptability for business managers to trust their employees. So therefore, I think people would be allowed to work from remote areas without people or their managers second guessing what they're doing. Managers would focus on deliverables rather than attendances, and therefore, I think the demand for office space may reduce in the future. To what extent, I don't know, but it will. And therefore, the technology again comes in very handy. Now, right now, I mentioned technology as in sensors and data and optimization. But in the future, I'm thinking of buildings that are adjustable in real time, that they can actually move from being an office one day to retail the next day to residential the other day. So basically, they're fluid designs where if a weekly change in demand occurs for space, the building would be modular in design, to facilitate that. So that there's a big convention coming to Toronto, and there's a need for 30,000 hotel rooms, and there's an office building that had 8 floors that were fully occupied, but not anymore. Those should be turned quickly into hotel rooms. For that to happen, which is not difficult, neither is it easy. I'm not saying it's trivial, but it's not difficult to design future buildings using technology in a more modular fashion, where the land use is flexible. It's wherever the demand is, the building will morph itself into delivering that demand.
That's an interesting concept. I know in Alberta recently, Calgary specifically, there have been a number of office buildings that have been repurposed to become multifamily rental buildings. From speaking with the property owners leading those projects, I know it's a big undertaking to do this.
It is a big undertaking. That's why one of our columns in Financial Post 3 months ago, we said that smart landlords will be anticipating such a change rather than reacting to it,
right.
Saying that what to do now. I think the good thing is for commercial real estate landlords that the leases are, the commercial real estate leases, they're not annual leases. You don't renew your commercial lease every year. They're long-term leases, 5 year, 10 years, some even longer. So there wouldn't be a drastic change year by year, month by month. It would take gradually 5 years or more for us to actually see the full demand, full extent and scope of the changes and that are heading our way.
That's interesting. So this is a real estate careers podcast, and our goal is to offer insights into the career paths available in the commercial real estate industry. So as a professor of real estate at Ryerson, you're clearly passionate about this too. So in your opinion, what are some of the new opportunities that might emerge from the situation we find ourselves in?
So there are tons of opportunities. Every crisis brings in a new generation of entrepreneurs and a new set of opportunities because we are forced to reimagine our lives. And whenever we are forced to reimagine, that's where the opportunity lies. So I think the COVID-19 challenges relate to transportation, relate to real estate, relate to retail, relate to hospitality more so, hospitality and tourism more so than others. In terms of real estate, I think the new way of thinking is that there are new linkages or that have not been in the past. For example, public health, and office space, or public health and communal space was not a big issue in the recent past. Now, in the past, that was a big issue. I mean, there was cholera breakout in London 100 years ago, and then there were other diseases like tuberculosis and whatnot, and there were so people had to design spaces and put people apart so that these kind of pandemics would not happen. But in the last 20, 30, 40 years, our biggest concern as it relates to health, public health, was related to emissions, air. So air quality was a big concern in cities big and small, because smog and then breathing challenges were a concern. But now, think about it, with COVID-19, you have to rethink or de-densify everything around you. It could be your transit system, it could be your house, it could be your school, it could be your daycare, it could be anything, an office space, retail. I just went out to pick up takeout, and I saw people are sitting having meals at the patio, but there's no one inside the restaurant. So now you have to reimagine, redesign the entire space around you, especially real estate, with a public health angle. That how do you protect people's health, and how when we become, COVID-19 has weaponized into human beings, right? Like you become a weapon once you are a carrier of the disease. This disease then makes you it just weaponized human beings, right? So you become a source of concern for others. So now you have to protect people, allowing people to meet and greet and be able to socialize, but at the same time we have to design spaces so that they're not inadvertently hurting others by passing on the disease. So So the design elements, the design of urban space with a particular focus on healthcare will open up a new career, or a new way of new business models. There will be firms who will be redesigning your offices. There will be firms who will be designing new filters so that the ventilation systems are not the channels through which the disease is going. There will be people who would come up with these amazing scheduling algorithms so that you can still be able to work, rotate workforce, have staggered workforce, that so that the to determine what is the optimum level of interaction that you need with a staggered workforce, when never all of them will be available at the same time at the office, but you still rotate them intelligently enough so that there's enough touch points between the employees that are necessary to be innovative, stay innovative. And then you design the inner workings of the office. Erecting plexiglass, that the way you see it at the retailers, is an ugly way of doing it. I mean, plexiglass, and that's a brute force reaction to, okay, I'm going to put a glass wall between you and me. But that's not what we meant by socializing. I mean, how much can you take talking to someone from across a plexiglass? So there has to be new ways of thinking about it. So a lot of innovation will take place in the physical design of the buildings, in the physical design of the public spaces. I mean, you have churches, you have mosques, you have synagogues, and they will have to be repopulated because for a large segment of the society really believes in their spiritual well-being and see these congregation as a source of their well-being. So you have to just imagine any place where you are congregating with others that are not directly your immediate family, and that space has to be redesigned. So if you ask me, are there opportunities? I think there's tremendous amount of opportunities. Just it's left to our own imagination as to how we'll be creative. If someone is graduating now from a university, they should actually say, I'm going to be a designer. Even if you're not a designer, just think of the solutions and team up with people and people who can draw, people who can fabricate metal, and come up with devices and solutions and projects and products and processes to make the place safe, and then get a lead and stay ahead of the competition by patenting it and mass producing it.
You mentioned the focus on air quality and a building's environmental impact. There's almost been an entire sector of jobs created to focus on this with the various certifications like BOMA, BEST, and LEED.
Absolutely. I mean, 20 years ago, maybe 20, 25 years ago, a LEED or green certification was not a big thing. No one had heard about it. But slowly and surely, these things become popular. And now buildings actually boast of their smaller environmental footprints and their LEED certification and whatnot. None of this existed before. And I think a lot of what we will see in the future does not exist now. We have a problem at our hand right now. The solutions are in the design. And I think those who are creative and brave enough to say that I'm not just going to look for a job in real estate and be a broker or a mortgage underwriter, which are the traditional jobs in the real estate industry. The brave ones and the successful ones are the ones who would say that we will reimagine urban space and communal space and office space, and we'll be the ones who will design it, draw it, and show the efficacy of new design so that they can introduce something new that did not exist and then build enterprises around them. I've got good faith in human creativity. I mean, every time there's a challenge, never ceases to amaze me how people come up with amazing solutions for problems that we face and for problems we don't even face.
Yeah, no, it's true. And on that theme, what skills, I guess, perhaps more on the soft skills, will be most valuable in the workplace in the future?
I honestly believe that the most valuable skill is sense of humor. I don't care what your education, training, just have a good sense of humor. If you cannot make others laugh, at least laugh at their jokes. Don't take life too seriously. This is my first advice to my students who are graduating. Embrace life. I mean, if you're young, then you have a competitive advantage over the rest. That youth, that energy. So embrace the moment and be alive and take things lightly. So sense of humor is very important. The other thing in terms of soft skill is curiosity. I want people to be very curious. Do not walk away from something that looks odd. Take a moment to absorb that thing, make a profound, or if not a profound, make a deep observation of something that looks odd. Be curious, ask questions, stop and ask questions. Don't be shy. I think the North American and to an extent European way of dealing with things is of that of subtleness and oh, I don't want to intervene, I don't want to impose. But if you don't intervene, you don't impose, you don't ask questions, how on earth will you uncover what you were curious about? So one thing that I loved about being a journalist is that you go up and with a notepad in your hand and you ask the most um, odd questions that people would think they would never answer. I wrote a story, and this is from Pakistan. I was a new journalist, started 6 months, maybe 6 months into a role, and I was doing a story on birth control, which in a conservative place like Pakistan. And I went to a village with an acquaintance, and I spoke with women who usually do not speak with men in their regular day-to-day lives, men who are not related to them. And then I did a full interview with several women on birth control, came back, wrote the story, and my editors were surprised. They said, "How did you do it? Why did they speak to you?" I said, "I just asked them a question. They were ready to answer." So this shyness that we have inbuilt, that we don't ask, that you have to find a way to break it. It's easier said than done, I must admit. But be curious and follow your curiosity and ask questions. The third thing is, if people who are starting a career in real estate, I think find a way to prove yourself. Don't If you think it's difficult to find a job, it's difficult to ask for a job, then ask for a task. So approach an employer that you would like to work for, ask them what are the challenges they are facing, and say, is there a way for me to volunteer, or is there a way for me to help you find a solution? And you don't have to hire me. I will take it as an internship. So the courses that I teach in data science, I tell students, don't go and ask directly for a job if you think you're not going to get it. If you can get it, so ask for it. But then go to the employers that you would like to work for and say, give us your data and a problem, and we will solve it for you. And if we solve it, we are worth it. If we are unable to solve it, you will never hear from us again, right? So the third thing about the career advice is ask for a task or a problem for you to solve. And only do this with the employers that you would like to work for. Don't do it for, you show up for McDonald's and you want to be a cash register operator and then say, well, no, that's not the career I'm referring to. But if you want to be a building manager, if you want to manage a portfolio of large office spaces, if you want to be a market researcher for a bank or a mortgage or underwriter, then go to them and say, I want to understand what your challenge is and give me an opportunity to think about it, and I'll come back with a solution. If you like it, good. We have a grounds to continue the conversation. If you don't like it, then no harm, no foul. Mm-hmm. So this way, have a sense of humor, be very curious, and ask for challenges that you can attempt on your own. If you think that you will not be able to get a job directly, people would have less reservation in giving you a task to see how good you are. And at the same time, I think it doesn't hurt to have some hard skills as well. Read. One thing that I did all my life is that I read a lot. And in the morning when I get up, I have several newspapers that I go through in the morning, and several news sites that I go through by 8 a.m. I've done a scan from what is happening in Tripoli in Libya to what is happening with the Strait of Hormuz or East Asia, or what happened. Why did Macron fired his prime minister in France, or all sorts of things, and what is happening in Philippines, and what happened in France the other day. Today, a bus driver is brain dead, but people attacked him because they refused to wear masks on the public transit where he was insisting, and he was beaten to a state of coma right now. So I do a scan of this so that a lot of it is unrelated. I'm not going to write a paper or violence on buses is not something that I look into. But at the same time, it just keeps us grounded. We know what's going on. We know it tells you what is happening. And the hardest thing for people to do is to stay away from this sort of useless information that we accumulate about batting averages and sports statistics and what the Kardashians are doing, and the celebrity. It consumes a lot of time. Honestly, it consumes a lot of time on people's time when they are just following the celebrity culture. May that be Hollywood or may that be sports. But if you could cut that a little bit, and not to eliminate it, cut that a little bit and get some worldly views as to what is happening. Understanding the limitation. One thing that as an engineer, I appreciate the most about my education is that when I look at problems and solutions, my training has allowed me to think about the possibilities. I don't propose a solution that is completely not possible, because physics, some basic understanding of physics is essential for one to live through their lives and not make mistakes. I mean, a good example, COVID-19, you could see how the World Health Organizations and the Canadian health leadership have been saying the masks are not required, masks are not necessary, they're not useful, they wouldn't work. There's a doctor who wrote in Globe and Mail saying, oh, if you keep your masks handy if you want to rob a bank, but it wouldn't help with COVID-19. And I think these are all people who would have benefited if they had taken grade 10 physics seriously. Right? I'm not talking about engineering or university level physics. Basically, it's a disease. COVID-19 is transmitted through close proximity, and these are bodily fluids that become airborne. And at the same time, you take 14 days before the symptoms are revealed while you are a carrier and infecting others. But it takes 14 days of being asymptomatic before you are aware that you're sick, and then you have to retrace your 14 days to figure out who else you have infected. Well, it wouldn't have happened if the World Health Organization or the medical leadership in Canada had realized that masks are useful, right? So, and they should have been encouraged to wear. Even now, I mean, Go Transit in Toronto, the regional transit system, Go Transit is not mandating to wear masks on their trains. A lot of it is pretty simple. If you go back and open your grade 10 physics and you realize, oh, wait a second, we are not helping with the containing the disease. So this is what I think. Read a lot, make sure that you have a good understanding of the fundamentals that govern our lives, especially physics. But the most important thing is curiosity, sense of humor, and the ability to volunteer or ask for a task. These are good career moves, regardless of being in real estate or something else.
I wasn't expecting you to say sense of humor is the most valuable skill. That's very refreshing to hear. Before I let you go, Murtaza, how about we do 5 quick fire questions to get to know you a little bit? Question number 1, what's one thing that you're passionate about that your students may not know about you?
Table tennis. I love playing table tennis. And I even won a competition recently, about 6 months ago. I love playing table tennis.
Okay, number 2, you're at an exclusive 5-star hotel resort and you're sitting down for breakfast where you can literally choose anything you want to eat or drink. What would be on the table in front of you?
Scrambled eggs and coffee.
Okay, no toast.
No toast.
Right.
Simple.
Number 3, what was the last book you recommended to a friend?
The last book I recommended to a friend is right here. I picked it up recently. It's Risk, Choice, and Uncertainty, 3 Centuries of Economic Decision Making. I just got it. I read a few chapters, and I just recommended this to a friend this morning.
Okay, interesting. Number 4, so we celebrated Canada Day last week. What's the one thing that makes you feel proud to be Canadian?
The egalitarianism of this place. I am in awe of how committed Canada is to provide opportunities to all. And the system is designed, there's no class system, there's no the ability for every new generation, irrespective of class, creed, or religion. This place provides every next generation to close the gap, if not completely fill the gap, and that existed between them and the rest in the previous generation. So this the ability to do better in the next generation, and then even better in the following generation, then the ability to have systems that are based on merit. And I love this about Canada. And I tell always to my friends, because I've grown up in different places and I chose to live in Canada, I treat every day of my life in Canada as a blessing, because I've seen how things. I've covered terrorism, and I've seen Afghanistan's war from a very close place. I've seen how bad things could get if we stop caring for our neighbors, if we stop caring for each other, if we stop sharing and sharing each other's diversity and celebrating it rather than just tolerating it. So there's a million things that I celebrate about Canada every day.
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah, we're certainly very lucky. So number 5, favorite holiday destination.
My favorite destination for the last 30 years has been the same. It's nothing gives me more pleasure to be in Jardin de Luxembourg in 5th District Arrondissement 5 in Paris. I've always find an apartment nearby and then spend a week or 2 if I can in that part of Paris, and then just roam about in streets, eat baguette and cheese, and fortunately my 2 sons also love baguette and cheese, so I'm transmitting this love of Paris to my kids, and it's my favorite place in the planet. It's not just the whole Paris, but this particular spot in this beautiful park, Jardin de Luxembourg. It's where I feel the most at peace.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Okay, so that's all we've got time for today in this episode, but really hope you'll join us again in the near future. Murtaza, thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you kindly.
Thank you for listening to People Who Perform, the Real Estate Careers podcast brought to you by Highview Partners, a talent search and recruitment firm focused exclusively on Canadian real estate. If your real estate team is looking to find the best next hire, or if you're ready to make the best next move in your career, then reach out to Highview Partners today. Follow us on LinkedIn and visit us at highviewpartners.ca.